kick on sharing here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Nice to spend some time with everyone today. I'm here to talk about Teams rooms. And I did also steal this from our group chat internally where we were talking about this. So the intro image here has that content in it as well. But here to talk about Teams rooms, I'm Matt Slomka. I am a senior program manager as part of the Teams product group. I am on our customer experiences side of the house, but I spend a lot of time talking to customers about Teams devices, and about Teams rooms in particular. If you've seen me before, I tend to be on our open hours that we run every week with a couple hundred customers on it. So if you've seen me before, that's who I am. But otherwise, I'm going to kind of talk through today, do a little bit of overview of Teams rooms just to kind of level set everybody, roll into some of the AI in Teams rooms and what does AI in Teams rooms mean. I can't do a public webinar working from Microsoft without mentioning Copilot at least 3 times. So I'll make sure that I mention that along the way as well. Then we'll dive into some of the deployment considerations and things like that. And then at the end, I've got some roadmap stuff, nothing under NDA, but some nice highlights of some public roadmap content that's coming out over the next little bit that I just want to share with everybody and make sure folks are aware of as they do their planning and considerations going forward. So with that said, I'm going to dive right in. Oh, and I will leave time at the end for Q&A because I like taking Q&A from folks. It's one of the more fun parts of what I do. So with that, I'm going to start with what are Teams rooms. And now marketing makes these lovely slides that have all these animations on it. These aren't slides that I can make myself. You'll see as we get further into the deck, the ones that I've made, they don't look nearly as pretty. But hey, I'm going to roll with it. So Teams rooms are intended to be the Teams experience that you have just in a meeting room space and in a shared space at the end of the day, but intended to be more intelligent, inclusive, collaborative meeting spaces, but done in an easy way. That way, your end users don't have to think about it. Everything just works. It matches what they do on their Teams desktop and on their team mobile devices, which makes that user training and user effort and all of that and user adoption so much easier. And then at the same time, doing all of the advanced things that you would expect from a new and continually evolving meeting room platform. So adding AI capabilities in from an audio and video perspective to, identify who's in that meeting room and put their display name in the same spot that you see my name now. Or maybe it's identifying them in a meeting transcript and adding some of that intelligent capabilities to the meeting room space, while at the same time making hybrid meetings a reality. You see the conversations around folks having returned to office and around different organizations having different meeting styles and different just work styles in general. But what you don't want is everyone to come in the office and have to be on a laptop talking in Teams. You want the face-to-face in-person interactions in those scenarios, at which point having meeting rooms makes sense. But having meeting rooms where those folks that are remote can also join make a lot of sense as well. And then building in some of the IT manageability story too, because we don't want to leave the IT admins out of this one. The user experience is really important, but making sure that you can deploy these successfully, manage them successfully, and keep them operational and up to date successfully long term, not just in the short term. All of that is included as part of Teams rooms. With that said, Teams rooms today is used by a little over 70% of the Fortune 500. So we've got a lot of adoption. We made an announcement at an earnings call a little while ago. I forget which earnings call it was now, but we have more than 1 million Teams rooms licenses in market today. And so with more than 1 million Teams rooms, there's a lot of folks using Teams rooms today. And it makes for a lot of exciting engagement and a lot of interesting interactions with customers as folks plan different feature sets and different use cases and different pieces around Teams rooms. So with that said, kind of diving into a little bit more detail on what I was touching on at the beginning there, one of the big things being, how do you make hybrid meetings a reality, and how do you make them really easy to use and inclusive? Because one of Microsoft's big things that we try to focus on is inclusivity across the organization, and making sure that everyone can be fully engaged in a way that they're comfortable engaging in that conversation. Maybe they want to do it from their laptop. Maybe they want to interact in a meeting room. Maybe they want to be on camera and be framed in a certain fashion. Maybe they need accessibility features. Maybe they need to see closed captions or just like seeing closed captions. Or maybe they do work in a different language despite working in the same office together. We shipped recently for Teams Rooms Windows the option to change the console language on the fly. So if you walk into a room and want to change the language from English to French, for instance, you can do that directly on a Teams Rooms console, again, making for a more inclusive meeting experience for everybody involved. And then from an IT admin perspective, that flexible and scalable solution. You can take one Teams meeting room device, drop it into a small space that fits your 2-person little huddle room, all the way up to I've helped customers do 1,000-person auditoriums on Teams Rooms. So Teams Rooms is scalable across the board to different size spaces and different solutions. And I'll get into a little bit of what does that look like for different Teams meeting use cases as well. We're on a webinar here today. There's standard Teams meetings. There's also Teams Town Hall and Teams Live events. And where does MTR fit into a lot of that? As we go into the roadmap session, I'll kind of share where we're going there as well. And then last piece is just manageability and scalability from a deployment and management perspective. So making sure that the Teams Rooms Pro Management Portal is there, available, keeping your devices up to date, giving you a ring progression through all of your estate so that you're not deploying an update to all of your devices at once. We've got customers with thousands of Teams Rooms deployed just in their own organization. Microsoft, being customer zero, has something over 13,000 Teams Rooms deployed today. With that, you don't want to deploy an update across all your devices at once because you want to test that update. You want to see those new features first and be able to do change adoption things across your own organization. So giving you a pro management portal that you can do all of that is all available with Teams Rooms today. And then at the same time, when something goes wrong, having automatic remediations to fix things. Just like anything that you're running from an operations perspective, there's going to be things that happen along the way. Maybe someone unplugged a camera, or maybe the camera just broke or lost power or things like that. But having auto remediation that try to fix things first before you as the IT admin have to get in, save you time, save you energy, and make it so that your rooms are more reliable from an end user perspective where they don't know something went wrong at all. So with that, going to start on kind of end user focused features first and kind of end user benefits first, and then we'll dive into the IT admin scalability and deployment cycle from there. So taking a look from an end user perspective, we've got capabilities in Teams Rooms today to, of course, join Teams Rooms, or of course, join Teams meetings, excuse me. At the same time, can fit it into many different spaces. And we also have interoperability solutions that fit into other scenarios because we know that Teams Rooms probably don't need to only join Teams meetings. Maybe you get a Zoom meeting invite. Maybe you get a WebEx meeting invite. How do you make sure that your Teams Rooms can join those meetings as well? And again, make your meeting rooms functional for your end user population, regardless of what's happening in that space and regardless of what platform you happen to need to join a meeting into. So kind of starting out, and I hinted at this a little bit early on, but Teams Rooms from a design perspective is intended to look and feel just like the Teams desktop application and the Teams mobile application. Intent behind this is that it takes that user training level down a lot. I used to write and help build custom control interfaces for conference rooms. And my last organization, we rolled out a custom programmed control interface that controlled a DSP in the room that could make a phone call, or a video conference codec that could make a video call. And we tried to write our own interface that end users had to then learn, had to know how to use, and had to be able to be educated and trained on. And that was way more complicated than just giving them an interface that they already do and use on a daily basis. Teams Rooms makes that a lot easier. It's consistent across the board. You could have a Teams Rooms on Windows device. You could have a Teams Rooms on Android device. That same end user experience is there and matches exactly what they would expect. The UI looks the same. And again, easier. Second piece being, you just invite it to a room like another, or you invite it to a meeting like another person. That way, when you walk in, you've got your join button there. You can tap and join into your meetings. We've also shipped recently things like QR code support, like you see behind me there, kind of bridging a easier way for end users to get devices into meetings if they didn't invite. We had gotten some feedback that proximity join, while really easy to understand for folks that knew it was possible, wasn't really easy to teach someone or have someone just discover on their own. If you're an end business user that happens to work in accounting and doesn't think about all of the different features and capabilities in your Teams room, and you just want to walk in and have a meeting and you've forgotten to invite the room, the first thing that comes to mind isn't, oh, let me try to join this from my laptop and then the room will magically make it in. And now, if you know you can do that, it's awesome. But when you don't know about that, it's a lot harder. So we introduced the QR code join capability purely just to make a really easy way for folks to walk in a room, see this giant QR code on the screen and go, oh, let me just scan that, and then I can make it into my meeting. And it's one of those user behavior things that IT admins don't always think about, but from an end user perspective, we've had really great feedback on it. And again, just makes it really easy to get into your meeting, and it's really easy to use for your end users. Now, again, like I said at the beginning, I would be remiss if I didn't say Copilot during this meeting. With that, a lot of what we're focused on is trying to make Teams rooms more intelligent. So trying to make it so that Teams rooms adds value to all of the other things that you try to do in your day-to-day business. So things like intelligent meeting recap have become a really large and important thing. I use it on a daily basis now in my life of just, oh, I didn't make that meeting. What was talked about? Or I got a notification the other day that someone said my name 5 times in a meeting that I didn't join. That was a fun notification of like, hey, Matt, you were mentioned by Alex here and you didn't join. And then I was able to go back through the recap and see what I missed and what I hadn't told someone about or hadn't done. And I was able to follow up. And it was like, oh, cool. I didn't have to even watch the recording. It just told me that like, hey, you were not in the meeting and they talked about you a bunch. Cool. So then I knew about it, was able to act on it, and I was able to know who was talking about me because they were in a room, but they were having their voice being identified. So I could tell that it was Alex inside of whatever conference room Alex was in Building 3 in Redmond, was talking about me. And then I knew exactly what the conversation was about. And like, awesome. So, but that's really important from a speaker and an intelligent identification perspective to know who's actually saying what in a meeting room. That way, the intelligent recap has that. So we've shipped for Teams rooms now what we call Intelligent Speaker. And this is a feature that has been around for a little while to talk about and identify who said what in a meeting room. But originally it required hardware. So you had to have very specific Teams rooms hardware and Teams rooms microphones that could send and do the identification bits. We have changed that paradigm. Now we have what we call Cloud Intelligent Speaker. Cloud Intelligent Speaker allows anyone and any Teams room. Today it's Teams rooms on Windows. It will be Teams rooms on Android in the future. But any Teams room to send a single audio stream into Teams, and then we server-side identify up to 10 different voices in that room that have enrolled their voice and go, oh, Matt was who was saying that. We can then mark it both in the running transcription and in the intelligent meeting recap afterwards to make that easier. This is available today. You have to turn it on. There is a public roadmap item notifying you that this is going to change, and it will be on by default starting in January. So if you haven't noticed that today, you can go through and make those modifications and make those edits to your organization to set those on and start utilizing these features today for your Teams rooms devices. And then kind of taking a look again at the AI side of things in Teams, but this time instead of voice identification, it is people identification. And people identification comes in a couple of different fashions. We, as Microsoft, have an offering. It's called Multi-Stream IntelliFrame. That means that there is a camera in the room that we have certified that can send up to 4 video streams directly from the camera, as well as a panoramic shot of the room for a total of 5 video streams. Those video streams can actually do facial recognition also against the face profile that a user has enrolled into Teams to be able to put the name label down next to their face so that you actually know who it is that's in that room and that's talking at the given moment rather than just seeing someone framed up. However, if you don't have cameras that do multi-stream IntelliFrame, you likely have cameras that do automatic IntelliFrame at the edge on their own. They just won't do the facial recognition bits, and they won't do the multi-stream bits. So it's going to be a single stream with people framed inside of it. That a lot of camera OEMs today have. Basically, every modern camera you could buy for a Teams room has that capability built into it today. But if you happen to have some legacy cameras. I'm going to pick on my Logitech C930E webcam that's behind me. Not that it's a legacy camera, but just because it's a $100 webcam that's been out forever, it doesn't have intelligent capabilities in it. But it is a certified Teams Rooms device. It can even be a content camera. With that, we have what we call Cloud IntelliFrame. We've built Cloud IntelliFrame to take that single video stream with multiple participants in it and cut out people to do the same framing. The goal being that between the three different solutions, your end users receiving that meeting room stream get a positive meeting experience no matter what camera is in that room, and giving you additional benefits today without having to replace hardware, without having to change anything, and just building a better hybrid meeting experience. So that's kind of the outside of room post-meeting conversations. And then I just want to spend a little bit of time on in-room experiences too, because while it's important for the folks outside of the room and what the experience they get, because we don't want to leave the folks outside of the room out, the folks in the room also need to have a good positive experience. So some of the things that we've been working on are largely focused on changing that front of room experience. So Teams Rooms front row has been our focus. This is a layout that happens on Teams Rooms that makes it so that everyone's at eye level with the folks in the room, and it gives you visibility to some of the other things happening in a meeting. So what I mean by that is chat on the right-hand side. Chat, we found, tends to be the meeting within a meeting from a Teams perspective. And what we got feedback from customers was that, hey, there's this chat going on in the background, and I'm in a room and I didn't bring my laptop or my mobile device, and I don't know what's happening in this chat, and people are talking about it, but I can't see it. Being able to have the chat displayed on the front of room screens gives it so that you, as the person in the room, can see what's happening and see that discussion that's happening in the background in the meeting chat and be able to see what's going on from that experience. So from that side, we've built all of that into Teams, and you'll see us continue to iterate some of the content that goes on those screens. I'll just hint at it, but check out what happens in the next little while here from a Teams perspective to see kind of some of the other things that we're going to put in those panels as well on front row. And then just kind of all up, we have several different layouts for Teams just to fit different desires from different end users. We've got front row, we've got just your standard people and content layouts depending on what you want to see. We also support large gallery view and together mode, which are just native Teams capabilities as well, but you're able to display them on your Teams rooms, giving you up to 49 inbound video participants if you need, or seeing folks in a consistent interface if you want to see folks sitting around a virtual boardroom table, for instance.
Hey, Matt, we have Glenn is asking a pertinent question about these video layouts that you have out there. So it's only showing one monitor solution. I mean, what is it going to look like if I have multiple monitors in that scenario?
Sure. No, I'm happy to address that. So from a Teams Rooms perspective, we support single screen 16:9, single screen 21:9, or dual screen 16:9 monitors. All of them are supported from a layouts perspective. All of them stretch across the displays. So this example here right now is a 21:9 display, but from what we do, we end up stretching that across the two monitors if it's a dual monitor setup. So you'll end up with the content on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side for front row, you get active speaker. So we promote whoever the active speaker is into the right monitor, and then we still display the participants across the bottom, just stretched across the two displays, making sure that we don't split someone down the middle between the two displays. For the other layouts, we've actually done, and I did a presentation on this with Jimmy Vaughn maybe 2 months ago. I think it was the September Teams Rooms Learning Hour, covering all of the layouts and capabilities of Teams Rooms, including single screen, dual screen in the middle. So all that content is out there as well. But for the rest of the layouts, it's typically people on one monitor and content on the other monitor, with the options to toggle chat on and off and things like that. If you don't have content displayed, we fill the displays with people. Now, if you've only got one person, they'll only be on one display. But if you've got at least two people, we start populating across the two displays and spread everybody out.
Thanks, man.
Yep. No, and thanks for stopping me. I've been watching the chat, and I'll try to cover some of it as we go too. But if you see stuff, just keep shouting. Continuing on into kind of inclusive meeting experiences, a lot of what we've done from an in-room perspective, we've got wireless casting. So every Teams client, be it desktop or mobile, has a built-in cast button in it. In the Teams desktop client, it's click the three dots and then click cast, and then you can wirelessly present to any Teams Rooms device using the same proximity join logic that we've built into the rest of Teams. You're able to do that just to present content into a room. We've also added live captions, as I hinted at earlier, and shown the chat on the front of room screen. Our next iteration that we're starting to talk about is joining Teams meetings while being in the room with your Teams room, also joining from your laptop and building companion join experiences there as well. So, and then last piece to kind of cover the what is Teams Rooms category. The last piece is we also have interactive whiteboarding capabilities. So a Surface Hub is a great example of being able to do an interactive whiteboard. You can also do it on a Teams Rooms on Android device or any Teams Rooms on Windows device with a connected touch screen monitor. But you can do fully interactive whiteboarding along the way and also at the same time interact on your laptop or on your personal device as you start to do those presentations or some of those more interactive and co-creation style sessions.
Hey, Matt, one question that was in the chat, but I believe it may actually go back to that companion join scenario. So Kali mentioned something about that they're experiencing an issue, and it seems like it's consistently with Teams rooms. So when remote users share content in the Teams call, the shared content is not displayed on the TV on the Teams room, but it is viewable by the remote users joining from a laptop. Is this something that maybe companion join maybe will help, or are we talking about maybe is this something that a support ticket may needs to jump into a little bit more?
That one's going to be a support ticket because I can't say I've heard that from other customers. My immediate thought is someone is blocking the content ports. So what's that? 50,000 and 30 or 40, whatever the content share ports are. That's where my immediate first thought goes. But something's wrong from a network perspective, most likely on that one.
Perfect. All right.
All right, so diving into deployment conversations. Teams Rooms fits into many different spaces, focus room, small, medium, large, all the way up to your boardroom, your big auditorium, things like that. And we've got archetypes that kind of align to all of those that we publish and we talk about. Reality is, from a deployment perspective, make sure you've defined what your meeting room estate looks like and pick a set of standards that you're going to deploy across your spaces. So all of my 4-person rooms have this configuration, all my 6-person rooms are this, and so on and so forth, just to make your fleet easier and more consistent. And then as you're looking at that conversation, there's different options. Maybe you need an integrated all-in-one bar for a small conference room. You don't need the complexity of multiple microphones, multiple speakers, multiple cameras for a small 4-person space. Cool. I'm going to pick an integrated kit that's just an all-in-one bar I hang above below the TV, and you're good. Or maybe I'm building a big 5-way divisible conference room where I need ceiling microphones, handheld mics, 10 different cameras, more complexity to it. The modular solutions make more sense. And then somewhere in the middle of all of that is touchboards, be it like the Cisco Board Pro behind me, a Surface Hub 2, Surface Hub 3 rolled into that space. There are several different form factors for those touchboards, but they fit in a lot of spaces and they make deployment really easy because it's an all-in-one device. You can literally roll it into the room and plug it in. So it makes it scalable and easy to use from a deployment perspective. With all of that said, based on the hardware that fits your types and fits into your different meeting room standards, the one thing that I like to recommend and that I plug every time I think I have conversations with customers on deployments is at the bottom of this, there's a link here to the device deployment playbook. Myself and a couple of others wrote the device deployment playbook a while ago, but it walks through step by step how to successfully deploy your Teams rooms. So as you're having those conversations and as you're starting your deployments, or if you've already begun your deployments, review it and see maybe there's some best practices that you could do to optimize your deployments and make your lives easier from a deployment perspective. But that deployment playbook is there. I will continue to plug it forever until I get Learn fully updated to match the deployment playbook, which I am working on now. And then, as you've kind of taken a look at all of the Teams Rooms hardware to make your room story really great, we also have Teams panels. Teams panels, I've got a neat one behind me here. You can see the green light there. Teams panels are the scheduling panel solution that goes on the outside of your meeting rooms. So if you're walking by a room and you see, oh, it's free, awesome, let me book it and walk into the space and use the space for an hour. Cool, you can do that with Teams panels. Teams panels can also enforce check-in functionality. So what we found, and what I found in my last organization too, is people book a room and then they don't ever actually show up to that meeting and don't ever actually use the meeting room. What check-in allows is you can enforce that after 15 minutes, you can automatically free up that room and make it available for someone else to use during that day. Again, making sure that your meeting rooms are utilized more effectively and not just vacant and booked by ghosts for the day instead, not to stick to our Halloween theme here. But with that, you have some options there. There's also a really fun feature that I like for Teams rooms where you can, if someone's in the room, let's say it's 2 o'clock and you're about to walk into that room and you go, oh, I have my 2 o'clock meeting, my room's booked. I see it on the panel. You walk up and someone's still in your room in their meeting before because it's running long. When you hit the check-in button on the Teams panel, it sends a notification to those in the room, letting them know that their meeting is running long and that you would like to use the room that you booked. And you can actually encourage them to leave. So very helpful from that perspective. You can also use Teams panels without having a Teams room in the space. Teams panels are either licensed as part of the Teams Rooms Pro license that you put on the resource account, or if you don't have a Teams room in the space, you can use a shared device license instead, which is a bit more cost effective if you're just using a Teams panel to deploy the Teams panel and have a bookable space in your room there. From a install perspective and from a scheduler perspective, today we don't auto book if you kick off a meeting without first hitting the reserve button on the panel, but it is something that we're looking at from a roadmap perspective too. If someone walks in and taps Meet Now, for instance, on a Teams room, we would just automatically change the presence to red on the panel, but that doesn't work today.
A quick question on, as we're hitting some of these devices, so I know one of them was from Glenn, and he was asking, well, would love to go with the Surface Hub. However, those are very expensive as a companion type of a scenario. We have a few other ones that are out there that are certified to be able to work with Teams rooms, right, Matt?
We do. So if you're looking for a companion solution today, something that's in coordinated join with a Teams Rooms device, the Surface Hub is really the best option for that. Coordinated join isn't available on Teams Rooms on Android devices today. It actually ties really well into this slide here. Coordinated join isn't available on Teams Rooms on Android. If you're not looking for that companion join and coordinated join experience, there are several Android-based all-in-one solutions, Yealink, Neat, Cisco, and I'm sure I'm forgetting someone, all make Android-based D10 make
D10
all-in-one based devices as well.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yep. And that ties really well into this slide, Don, of Teams Rooms on Windows versus Teams Rooms on Android. I try not to call it a versus conversation, but for the most part, people ask, hey, what is it? Why? What should I do? When? Where? And how? So we had a blog article about this a while ago. I actually pulled a lot of this content from the blog article, but from a deployment perspective, Teams Rooms on Android, Teams Rooms on Windows, both fully supported from a Microsoft perspective. Both fully supported. We're committed to both platforms. We're building towards both platforms. However, there are some things that make Windows make more sense than Android, and sometimes there's things that make Android make more sense than Windows. From a peripheral support perspective, if you're trying to build those modular spaces, Teams Rooms on Windows tends to be the right platform. It supports USB plug and play, and we have a giant ecosystem of devices that support every Teams Rooms on Windows device today, where if you try to buy a Teams Rooms on Android device and do a modular setup with it, you're locked into a couple of very specific devices and peripherals that have been built to expand and work in that space. So that's the ones that I tend to suggest and expand on that side. From an OS update and delivery perspective, Microsoft today is accountable for the operating system and the applications running on a Teams Rooms on Windows device, where on the Android side, the OEM is responsible for the operating system and we write the application on it. Same thing from a feature release perspective. This tends to be the biggest conversation with customers. Teams Rooms on Windows is built on the Teams Rooms or on the Teams desktop app, excuse me. So new features that come to Teams make it to Teams Rooms on Windows first, frankly, just because it's easier. It's already been developed, it's already been built. All we have to do is modify that code base to support multiple screens that Teams desktop client doesn't really do all that much with. We need to support a console experience and multiple front of room screens. We got to change how the gallery behaves and things like that. But the actual work effort there is substantially smaller than the Teams Rooms on Android side that came from the mobile app side of Teams originally. So things that are built for mobile then have to be updated and supported to be able to do things on Teams Rooms on Android. So it takes us a little bit longer. We're still committed to both. We've still got devs on both, but just from a feature acceleration perspective, if you must have the latest and greatest AI features every single time, Teams Rooms on Windows is going to be a better path for your organization. And then last piece before I kind of dive into some roadmap conversations and then try to hit on Q&A is Teams Rooms Pro Management Portal. So Pro Management Portal is our destination and our goal for doing all configuration and doing all management of Teams Rooms devices today. There are some things that still have to be done in Teams Admin Center. That will change over time. But for the moment, Teams Rooms Pro Management Portal is our goal and our North Star for all manageability, giving you the ability to save time, easy deployment, easy configurations, bringing all the comprehensive bits forward that you would expect. It also has a partner delegation model. So if you've got a meeting room partner that helps with your meeting rooms and manages some of your meeting rooms today, there's even a delegation model there where you can give that partner access to your Pro Management Portal so that everybody can use the same sets of manageability across all of your devices. And then for that, there's a bunch of categories of health signals to be able to see. Oh, is the device online, offline? Is it signed in correctly? Are some of the peripherals offline for some reason? Is there a outage? Is there a connectivity problem? Are you blocking access to certain URLs and so the device can't sign in or the device can't be monitored? Being able to deliver all of that to you in a single pane of glass in a way that you can manage and triage as an organization are key. And then I saw this mentioned in the chat. Big advantage to Teams Rooms on Windows is Windows Autopilot. Intune built Autopilot with Windows years ago. We now leverage Autopilot self-deployment where it can automatically deploy itself from the beginning, deploy, then it goes to the Pro Management Portal and goes, hey, I'm hardware ID 1234. And the Pro Management Portal can go, oh, these are your credentials here to be able to go, oh, here you go, and sign in automatically as well. So you can do true zero-touch deployment from a technical configuration perspective, at least, of Teams Rooms on Windows devices. Someone's still got to plug the device in, so haven't fixed and automated that problem yet, but we'll get there eventually. But in the meantime, at least auto-deploying and doing the easy parts and doing the technical parts there. With that, if you don't want to use Autopilot for one reason or another, we support one-time passcode. One-time passcode is leveraging the same capabilities that we built for Windows Autopilot, but making it so that someone has to actually type in, I think it's a 16-character one-time passcode to get devices signed in and ready to go. So with that, I'm going to pause for a second to roll through a couple of the questions in the chat, and then I'm going to jump into roadmap, and then I'll leave some time where we can do some open Q&A as well. But a couple questions here. Is there anything on the roadmap to allow more access to devices or controls remotely by utilizing the Pro Management Portal? So first thing is we released remote access for Teams Rooms on Windows devices. So you can remotely access the console and the front of room screens for Teams Rooms on Windows devices. That gives you full control of the device. Now, ideally, we also have settings and configuration profiles for those. Those may or may not be coming in the future. Some features have to be made locally. Yes, there's plans to be able to do everything remotely in the future. I can't comment on exact roadmap dates, but it is planned, along with custom backgrounds, things like that. For Teams Rooms on Android devices and Teams panels, we did put those things into the configuration profiles in TAC. Moving away from Teams Admin Center to Pro Management Portal, yes, is the plan. So there is a direction towards a single pane of glass for manageability of all of your rooms devices. So With that, going to cover some roadmap things. First, I want to hit on some things that we've just released that I think are fun to talk about. So we released ultrasound proximity join for Teams rooms on Windows devices. This will come to Android in the future, but ultrasound is a add-on to the Bluetooth proximity join capabilities. So we've already got Bluetooth proximity join across all the devices. We've added ultrasound, which is a high frequency tone to be used to provide a more accurate proximity join scenario. That way you know that you're physically in the room, because sound doesn't as easily travel through walls as Bluetooth does. So adding a little bit more accuracy so that we make it easier to make sure that Teams knows that you're in the correct room when you try to join a meeting. We've also released Join by Meeting ID for Zoom meetings. So now when you go to Join by Meeting ID, if you've got Zoom enabled on your device, you'll get a Zoom button there that you'll be able to select from as well to be able to join by ID into Zoom meetings. And then last piece is a QR code meeting join as well. That was released on Teams Rooms on Windows and Teams Rooms on Android a couple of months ago. But again, making for a really easy way to get into your Teams meetings for end users. And then one other thing that we just released is OEM Camera Controls. So OEM Camera Controls, today the intent for this is it's actually called Smart Camera Controls internally, but on Teams Rooms on Windows and Teams Rooms on Android, there is an arrow next to the camera. If the OEM supports it, which is a caveat, we have the ability to flip between 3 different intelligent framing modes that are our branding of those modes, intent being that regardless of what camera you put in the space, you've got intelligent framing capabilities, and your end users don't have to think, oh, it's called grid view here, it's called gallery view here, it's called people framing here. Consistent naming scheme across all of the cameras. So it'll be IntelliFrame, auto framing, and active speaker. You'll have those controls and capabilities there. That is GA today on Windows and Android Teams rooms. Diving into roadmap items, these are things that are on the public roadmap today. So if you go to aka.ms/mtr roadmap, it will take you to a filtered list of the M365 public roadmap items that have these things in it. But I took these from the Message Center posts also, so this is all public information today that you can get, but I'm going to add some color and talk about it a little bit. So one of the first things on the list is cross-platform meetings via SIP in Teams rooms. So this is coming soon. I think it's targeted for November on the public roadmap today, but this adds meeting join capabilities for Amazon Chime, Google Meet, GoToMeetings, and Ring Central meetings, as well as really any third-party SIP meeting if you put a SIP URI in the location field. But with that, this adds Join by Meeting ID support, as well as just Join on Calendar support for all of these platforms. Caveat to this being you need to have SIP calling enabled on your MTR to make this feature available. So if you don't have SIP calling enabled on your MTRs, time to look at SIP calling enablement. This will all be in the public docs as well. We're drafting the docs now as we speak, but new capabilities there. You also get 1080p video instead of 720p video. You get dual screen support and HDMI ingest for content share in these third-party meetings. So again, expanding that interop capability for what you can get across Teams rooms. Next thing that's coming really soon, and this one I'm actually kind of excited for, is for Teams rooms on Windows devices. You'll be able to connect up to 4 cameras to the MTR and send the 4 cameras to Teams directly. So if you've got a large room that maybe you've got 4 cameras deployed in to cover front left, front right, back left, back right of a table, for instance, you can actually have 4 cameras aimed at 4 sides of the room and share that directly into a Teams meeting, making it available for everyone to see and making it available for everyone remote to see. Those remote will get the default experience of seeing all 4 cameras, and then they can actually select and pick a camera they want to focus on if they want to as well. But that is available and in the M365 public roadmap as well. There was some mention in the chat earlier of Town Hall. So on the public roadmap for, I think this is December, so don't quote me on the exact date, I think it's December, we will have support for presenting into Teams Town Halls from Teams rooms on Windows devices. So today it sort of works. I've had lots of customers tell me, Matt, the docs say that it's not supported, and it worked on my device. It technically does work, but there are some things that don't work how we want them to. So you'll see some changes there and some improvements come so that it behaves how we want it to, so that it understands what management attendees see and you get a positive experience in those spaces. So that piece is coming. And then two more bits here that I want to hit on. So there's enhanced view of in-room participants. So we actually announced this at Enterprise Connect a while ago, but this is if you've got that multi-stream IntelliFrame camera and you join from your laptop in that same room, the camera is getting a shot of you because you're sitting in the room, and your laptop is getting a shot of you because you're sitting in front of your laptop. And now if both cameras are on, you don't need two of you in the gallery, but we should pick the better version of you. If you're talking towards your laptop camera, awesome. Let's use that as the view that's presented to the remote audience. Or if you're faced and turned towards the camera in the room, let's use that version of you. So there's going to be some intelligence there as we can actually automatically flip back and forth between different cameras. And then building into that, this is that same multi-camera scenario that we were talking about a couple of slides ago. This is that enhanced room view where you can actually see like presenter and an audience view, or just the audience view, and you can flip back and forth between the different cameras as someone there. I see this as a really big use case for training rooms and a couple of boardroom scenarios as well, but ideally this becomes a huge piece and makes it easier for everybody as we go through Teams. Last piece I want to talk about, we did this whole session on it, but AOSP device management is coming as well. So our goal is to GA in the next little while here, the new manageability and MDM enrollment capabilities for Teams Android devices. Blog post and migration docs linked there, but I just want to do my PSA of prepare your environment for that. If you haven't heard about AOSP device management, please read the blog. Please read the migration steps so that your organization is ready to make that move to AOSP device management when the firmwares are ready. So, and no date. November is the most I'm going to promise at the moment. The blog post will be updated. The top Q&A item in the blog post specifically says there is no date, but we promise it's coming soon, and we'll update the blog when things are ready. We want to ship with quality. We've got all of our GA candidates rolling. We've made it through the majority of our testing at this point, so we're fairly confident in the November-ish date, but things change. We want to make sure that we ship something that doesn't have problems for folks. So we're doing everything that we can, and yes, if you are participating in TAP, it is available in TAP. At which point, Q&A time. I've left 10 minutes. I think I hit that almost right on where I was aiming. So
good job, Matt.
We've got questions. Shout.
All right. Well, let's do this. I'm going to allow the mics for everybody, and raise your hand if you have a question that you want to come off mic and ask. Otherwise, you can drop it in just normally if you want to, but we'll try the raise hand thing first. I mean, there's been a lot of great questions coming through the chat, so I want to thank the team behind the scenes and Matt answering the questions as well. So Jonathan, and I have to call out Jeff, Bart also for answering questions.
Thank you. And if nobody has specific questions, I'm rolling through the Q&A. It looks like there was ask of open hours. It looks like Jeff put the link in chat. Yep. But for those interested in joining Teams Rooms open hours, it is 10 a.m. Pacific. No, sorry, 9 a.m. Pacific every Wednesday. The link to join is under the question mark in the Pro Management portal. So if you log into the Pro Management portal, the link to join is there for you.
Right. Yep. Looks like Darren threw something in about AOSP, of course.
Yes, so AOSP is in the Intune portal today. So if you follow the migration steps in the docs, you can already create the enrollment profile. It is GA. It is available for everyone. The preview label, I think, was also taken off of it now, too. So it shouldn't even say preview on it in the Intune management portal anymore. But you can go through and do that today.
And just to make sure, don't worry, even if you implement it now, it's not going to screw anything up that you have already in place. And there's nothing you have to worry about. When those devices get those updates, they'll automatically see that policy and just go, right? So understand that maybe some people are a little leery of doing that. So it's good. It's not going to cause any problems at this point.
Exactly.
The inverse is also true, right? If we don't have the policy in place and the device does take an update, but the policy isn't set to accept an AOSP firmware. I mean, I'm sorry, Matt, didn't mean to take the mic from you, but
Yeah, so the inverse of that is mostly true. If you don't have the policy implemented and you go to deploy the firmware, if you deploy the firmware without the enrollment profile, your devices will sign out. So you will have a challenge there.
Yeah, agreed. And so Suba was asking, is that update coming from Microsoft or from vendor? It's a two-parter, right, Matt?
So the answer is both. So the OEM is building the firmware with the new applications packaged in it. The Teams Rooms OEMs and Teams Phone and Panel OEMs are releasing the update. The update will be made available in Teams Admin Center, but the update will also be available through your OEM manageability portals. The one thing I want to caution is we, as Microsoft, have put a bunch of warnings when you go to update devices in Teams Admin Center to warn you that, hey, make sure you've done these steps first and link off to the Learn articles. Most of the OEM management portals won't have done that. So make sure that you've done and created your enrollment profile ahead of time. And I think the last time we all talked, we hadn't updated away from the 90-day enrollment policy token yet. That has changed. If you go to create a new AOSP enrollment profile today, it is a 65-year default expiry. Set the 65-year one, and ideally none of us are talking about Teams devices in 65 years, and we'll roll with that. So that should be making things easier. Yeah. Hey, if I'm still talking about it.
That's a great update. Well, 65 years. Yeah, you'll be like, what, 69, right?
There you go. Yeah. I better be retired at a minimum.
Yeah, I was just saying we better all that way. It's somebody else's problem at that point.
Exactly.
Looks like also, so Troy was wondering, and I think I've seen this before. I've seen this done. Can you make a Surface Go into a scheduling device?
So
I know they've done it with an MTR, but scheduling device, that's a little bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, so honestly, we've shied away from any of the roll your own concepts for Teams rooms, largely from a supportability perspective. I also have some struggles with putting tablets as schedulers. Generally, things with batteries in them don't like when you leave them charging all the time, and things don't go well. The dedicated hardware to do scheduling panels tends to be a better solution from a stability perspective. So no plans at the moment. We've shied away from even iPad style apps or things like that for the same reason.
Perfect.
I see Ken posted a question. Any announcement on when MTR Pro portal for GCC High, Matt?
Oh yeah, the GCC
government friends. Yeah, government.
So we released GCC support. We have not announced GCC High support at this point, and I can't comment on roadmap there at this time.
But we do have good news for Gartner.
Yeah, I clicked the wrong button on the slides, but it's in the back.
We'll leave that at the end here. I think we have another one that just came up about firmware updates, about being able to disable those updates.
So you cannot disable automatic updates. Teams is governed by the modern lifecycle policy of Teams Rooms, Teams Devices, Teams Clients. We expect all customers to be on less than 90-day-old builds of all Teams clients. So automatic updates cannot be disabled. You can delay the updates if you've got specific challenges with an update, but the expectation is that all devices are running current firmware and application builds to stay in a supported state and a secure state.
All right.
You can tell I've said that one a couple times.
Yeah, I think you've said that quite a lot. Any other questions? Anybody want to come off mute? Everybody's kind of quiet today. They don't want to hear our voice.
There's been some really great questions in the chat.
Oh, they
I
have
was trying to hit them as we rolled along here. So I think we've caught most of them.
Christopher, we will have this presentation available out on YouTube channel. And Don, I don't know, we could
Well, we should be putting them out on actually in our channel
No,
itself,
Teams.
because YouTube is not going to do well with actual
Yeah,
presentations.
but we can post this out on our Teams.
Yep, absolutely.
So yeah.
Okay.
So Christopher, you have access to the community, and you filled out registration. Then you should have access. I'll double check that you do, and we'll post the deck. Thank you, Matt, if you're good with that.
Works. Yeah, there's nothing in here that's a secret. I stole some marketing slides that were intended for public, and then some roadmap slides that I made, but they're all public content, so we're good.
Perfect. All right, why don't you roll the last one?
All right. Yeah, you wanna this one was in the marketing
we
slides,
have
and I
to
left
talk
it in
about
the
this.
appendix, but I was like, I should talk about this too. I was
We
like,
have
this
to talk
doesn't
about
hurt.
this.
Good news.
So
Sure.
yeah, no, so awesome news from a Gartner perspective. Microsoft is a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for unified communications as a service for the 6th year in a row. I think we've done some good things here. So this has been really awesome to see, and there was much excitement on our side when this came out. Was that a week ago now? I forget exactly when, but no, that's been really awesome as well. So we are doing everything we can to maintain that position also, and continuing to advance in that space.
Yes. And investing, right? Believing in the platform and what we're doing. So that's a huge testament to engineering and our customers, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and the feedback. Absolutely.
Yes. I appreciate the continued feedback.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Matt. Nice job again. Great questions. Thank you, everybody. And I think we're going to take over and just finish it off and get everybody out of here for today. So,
thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate your time today.